Why do so many people, including those who are intelligent, motivated, and genuinely well-intentioned, keep repeating the same self-destructive patterns? Why do we begin new goals with excitement and confidence, only to abandon them halfway through? Why do we damage relationships we care about, delay work that could change our lives, and repeatedly make choices we already know will harm us, yet continue doing the same things again and again? The usual explanations are familiar: lack of discipline, laziness, fear, insecurity, or low self-esteem. But these explanations are not just incomplete, they are fundamentally wrong. Self-sabotage is not a character flaw or a moral failure. According to neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky, author of Behave: The Biology of Humans at Our Best and Worst, self-sabotage is the result of a neurological conflict, a biological struggle taking place inside the brain between systems with completely different objectives. On one side is the prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thinking, long-term planning, impulse control, and self-awareness. On the other side is the limbic system, an ancient and instinctive network designed to seek immediate pleasure, avoid discomfort, and conserve energy. In this internal conflict, the limbic system almost always wins. And this is not a metaphor, but a scientific fact. The human brain was shaped by millions of years of evolution in environments where danger was constant and survival was uncertain. In those conditions, the brain that reacted quickly, avoided risk, and prioritized immediate rewards was the brain that survived. The problem is that this same brain now operates in the modern world, where threats are no longer physical, yet the brain still reacts as if discomfort itself is dangerous. Writing an email, starting a project, or facing uncertainty triggers the same avoidance mechanisms once meant to protect us from predators. The most unsettling truth is that your brain was never designed to help you achieve happiness, purpose, or self-actualization. It is optimized for short-term safety, not long-term fulfillment. This is why failure is not a result of weakness, but obedience to a brain running on outdated evolutionary software. In this script, we will explore how the human mind truly works, why procrastination, impulsivity, and self-sabotage are not anomalies, but defaults, and how to outsmart these mechanisms not with force or motivation, but with strategy. Because if you continue fighting your own brain directly, you will lose. But if you redesign the conditions under which it operates, self-sabotage stops being inevitable. This is not motivational content. It is a survival manual for those who feel at war with themselves. Part 2. The myth of a single self. Most people live with a comforting illusion that there is a single, unified self in control of their mind. A rational observer that evaluates information, makes logical decisions, and directs behavior with clarity and intention. This belief feels reassuring because it supports the idea that we are autonomous, self-governing individuals, fully responsible for our thoughts and actions. However, neuroscience presents a far more uncomfortable reality. According to Robert Sapolsky and many contemporary neuroscientists, the human brain is not a single coherent system, but a collection of multiple systems and circuits operating simultaneously, often in direct competition with one another. You do not have one brain with one objective. You have many neural systems with different priorities, shaped by different evolutionary pressures. Some parts of your brain are focused on long-term planning, growth, and future outcomes, while others are entirely concerned with comfort, safety, and immediate relief. This internal fragmentation explains why you can sincerely want to change and still repeat the same behaviors, why you plan to wake up early and yet press the snooze button, and why you promise yourself focus but find your attention pulled toward distractions. This is not hypocrisy or weakness, but architecture. When the prefrontal cortex recognizes that a task is important for your future, it attempts to guide behavior using logic and foresight. But the moment discomfort appears in the form of boredom, uncertainty, or mild anxiety, a much older and faster system reacts automatically. The limbic system does not analyze or deliberate. It triggers an impulse to escape, whether through entertainment, food, or digital stimulation. This process happens in milliseconds, often before conscious awareness arises. By the time rational thought attempts to intervene, the behavior has already begun. Afterward, another system steps in to protect your self-image by rationalizing the decision, creating explanations such as fatigue, lack of urgency, or the promise to do it later. In this way, the brain does not merely sabotage behavior, it deceives consciousness itself. This internal conflict has been described throughout history in different ways, from Freud's ID and ego to Jung's shadow. But modern neuroscience confirms that it has a concrete biological foundation. The core mistake we make is believing that intention alone should be sufficient to change behavior. Once you understand that the mind contains multiple competing systems, self-sabotage stops being a moral issue and becomes a management problem. There is no sovereign self-issuing commands. There are neural systems that must be directed, constrained, and strategically aligned. This understanding changes everything. Because as long as you believe that simply deciding to change is enough, frustration is inevitable. Real change requires not more strength, but better strategy. Part 3. A brain built for a world that no longer exists. To truly understand why self-sabotage feels so automatic, we need to face a difficult truth. The brain you rely on every day was not designed for the world you currently live in. It is an ancient biological system operating in a modern environment. For the vast majority of human history, survival was the primary objective, not productivity, creativity, or emotional fulfillment. Our ancestors lived in hostile and unpredictable conditions where food was scarce, danger was constant, and long-term planning had little value compared to immediate survival. As a result, the brain evolved to prioritize rapid reactions, avoidance of discomfort, conservation of energy, and the pursuit of immediate rewards. These behaviors were not flaws. They were essential survival strategies. In contrast, modern life demands sustained focus, delayed gratification, abstract planning, and long-term commitment to goals whose rewards may not appear for months or years. Yet, the neural systems evaluating these demands are still calibrated for a world where tomorrow was uncertain. When you attempt to build discipline, maintain routines, or work toward long-term growth, you are asking the prefrontal cortex to dominate behavior. But this system, while sophisticated, is slow, fragile, and energetically expensive. Meanwhile, the limbic system remains fast, automatic, and dominant, responding to discomfort before logic can intervene. Sapolsky emphasizes that the brain did not evolve to make you successful or fulfilled, but to maximize survival and reproduction. This means the strongest neural circuits in your mind are focused on reducing discomfort now, not improving your life later. The brain naturally prefers the dopamine spike of instant gratification to the quiet progress of meaningful work, not because it is malfunctioning, but because it is functioning exactly as evolution designed it to. This mismatch between an ancient brain and a modern environment is known as evolutionary mismatch, and it explains why self-sabotage is not an anomaly, but a predictable outcome. We live in a world of abundance while carrying a brain programmed for scarcity, surrounded by stimuli that aggressively exploit our reward systems. In this context, self-sabotage is not a breakdown of the mind, but the correct operation of a survival machine forced to function in an overstimulating world. Part 4. Dopamine and the tyranny of now. When faced with a choice between long-term growth and immediate comfort, most people already know which option is better. Yet something inside consistently pulls them toward the easier path. This force is dopamine. For many years, dopamine was incorrectly described as the brain's pleasure chemical. But modern neuroscience reveals a more precise and more troubling reality. Dopamine is not responsible for pleasure itself. It governs anticipation, motivation, and pursuit. Whenever you feel the urge to check your phone, eat something unnecessary, escape a difficult task, or seek distraction, dopamine is already active. Crucially, this system is heavily biased toward rewards that are immediate, tangible, and effortless. The brain assigns greater value to what can be obtained now than to what might be achieved later, a process known as temporal discounting. As rewards move further into the future, their perceived value diminishes at the neurochemical level. A small pleasure in the present can outweigh a meaningful outcome months from now, not because of flawed reasoning, but because of biology. From an evolutionary perspective, this bias made sense in environments where waiting carried risk and uncertainty. However, in modern life, this same mechanism drives procrastination, impulsivity, and compulsive behavior. We are surrounded by technologies and products deliberately designed to exploit this system, delivering rapid dopamine spikes through endless content, social validation, and convenience. Over time, repeated exposure strengthens these neural pathways, turning conscious choices into habits and habits into automatic responses. Eventually, self-sabotage no longer feels like a decision, but a reflex. Dopamine not only influences what you do, but also reshapes what you value, narrowing attention, reducing tolerance for effort, and making long-term goals feel distant and uninteresting. This is why resisting temptation through willpower alone rarely works. Dopamine cannot be defeated through force. It must be redirected. The key is not eliminating reward, but redesigning how and when rewards are delivered so that effort itself becomes associated with anticipation and satisfaction. Part 5. Why willpower collapses under pressure. Modern culture strongly promotes the belief that success, discipline, and self-control are purely matters of willpower. That if you want something badly enough and push yourself hard enough, you will inevitably succeed. Neuroscience, however, tells a very different story. Willpower is not unlimited, stable, or reliable. The prefrontal cortex, which governs self-control, planning, and rational decision-making, is one of the most energy-demanding systems in the brain. Every decision you make, every impulse you resist, and every moment of sustained focus consumes metabolic resources. Sapolsky explains that self-control functions much like a muscle. The more it is used, the more fatigued it becomes. This phenomenon, often described as decision fatigue or ego depletion, means that as the day progresses and choices accumulate, the brain's ability to regulate behavior weakens. Modern life accelerates this process by bombarding us with constant decisions from the moment we wake up: what to check, what to respond to, what to ignore, and how to manage endless interruptions. By the time we reach the tasks that matter most, such as learning, creating, exercising, or working toward meaningful goals, our executive system is already drained. When this happens, control shifts away from the rational brain toward faster, automatic systems that prioritize comfort and familiarity. This is why self-sabotage intensifies at night, why distractions feel irresistible, and why starting tomorrow becomes so convincing. It is not a failure of character, but a predictable biological response to cognitive exhaustion. No one maintains perfect discipline indefinitely. Not elite performers, not monks, not high achievers. The difference is not stronger willpower, but smarter structure. Those who perform consistently design their lives to minimize decisions, reduce temptation, and preserve mental energy for what truly matters. When behavior becomes routine rather than choice-driven, resistance fades, and self-control is no longer constantly required. Part 6. Engineering a world that works for you. If the brain is a biological system designed primarily for immediate survival rather than long-term growth, then overcoming self-sabotage requires redesign rather than resistance. Most people fail not because they lack effort, but because they fight impulses directly while ignoring the most powerful influence on behavior: the environment. Sapolsky makes it clear that the limbic system wins because it acts first, responding automatically before rational thought can intervene. This means that in the moment of impulse, whichever option is easier, faster, and more accessible will almost always be chosen. Self-sabotage persists because the destructive path is often the path of least resistance. To change this dynamic, it is necessary to manipulate three core variables that shape behavior beneath awareness: choice, friction, and reward. Reducing the number of decisions you need to make preserves mental energy and removes opportunities for failure, which is why simplifying routines and eliminating unnecessary options is so effective. Increasing friction for unwanted behaviors, while reducing friction for desired ones, forces the brain to follow healthier paths automatically. Logging out of distracting apps, removing temptations, preparing tools in advance, and designing physical cues all shift behavior without requiring effort. At the same time, dopamine can be redirected rather than resisted by pairing effort with immediate reward, a strategy known as temptation bundling, which trains the brain to associate productive actions with pleasure. Finally, vague intentions must be replaced with automatic commands through if-then planning, turning decisions into predictable responses triggered by time or context. These techniques are not productivity tricks, but protective systems designed to counter ancient survival instincts. As behavior becomes automatic, self-control becomes unnecessary, and progress occurs without constant internal conflict. Part 7. Timing is not productivity, it is biology. There are moments when focus feels effortless, decisions are clear, and action flows naturally. And there are other moments when even the simplest tasks feel overwhelming. This difference is not caused by motivation or mood, but by neurobiology. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for focus, self-control, and long-term planning, does not operate at a constant level of strength. Its effectiveness fluctuates throughout the day, depending on sleep, stress, nutrition, and circadian rhythm. Sapolsky explains that for most people, this system is strongest in the early hours after waking, when cognitive energy is high and impulse resistance is intact. Yet, many people waste this critical window by immediately engaging with distractions, trivial messages, and unnecessary decisions, draining their executive resources before addressing what truly matters. By the time they attempt meaningful work, the rational brain is already fatigued, allowing impulsive systems to take control. To break this pattern, it is essential to protect periods of peak cognitive strength and schedule the most demanding tasks during these windows. Whether this occurs in the morning or later in the day depends on individual biology, but the principle remains the same. Align effort with capacity. When actions are performed at biologically favorable times, the need for willpower decreases dramatically. This approach replaces force with cooperation, allowing behavior to work with the brain rather than against it. Ultimately, Sapolsky's work reveals a difficult but liberating truth. Self-sabotage is not a personal failure. but a predictable outcome of a brain designed to avoid pain, seek pleasure, and conserve energy. Once this is understood, change becomes a matter of system design rather than self-judgment. By restructuring environments, routines, and timing to align with biology, it becomes possible to break the cycle of self-sabotage and create progress that feels natural rather than forced. Understanding the machine allows you to operate it. And once you can operate it, transformation is no longer a matter of hope, but of inevitability.